Hello and welcome to another video. I'm Maz and this is a DB9. That's right, this video will have to be done via voiceover due to having audio issues with this review. That being said, here is some content I made on this Aston Martin DB9. A huge thank you to JayEmm on Cars for letting me drive his DB9. And if this DB9 seems oddly familiar, it used to belong to Ben from Dad Cars. He used to make a lot of content with this DB9, so a huge shout out to him and a huge shout out to JayEmm on Cars. So a quick overview, the Aston Martin DB9 was launched in 2004, replacing the DB7, and was in production up until 2016 with the arrival of the DB11. Now, the DB nameplate, which stands for David Brown, originally started a while back and it would go up in increments of one. So you got the DB2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And then Aston Martin decided to skip DB8 with two theories. One is that the DB9 was so different from the 7 that it required two increments. And the second theory is that the DB8 might confuse customers into thinking it has an 8-cylinder engine. They also skipped DB10, but technically speaking, that was a one off car for James Bond, so they had to skip 10 for that. And of course, the DB11 was replaced by the DB12. The DB9 was also one of the VH platform cars, VH standing for vertical horizontal, and the range would include the DB9, the Vantage, the Rapide, and the second generation Vanquish. The DB9 also came in three phases: the earlier cars with 450 horses and a traditional Volvo key fob and Ford Ka key. Then in 2008 came the glass key revision, which included, as mentioned, the glass key, as well as a bump in power by 20 horses. And in the case of the sports pack, some nicer wheels, some nicer brakes, and some subtle styling differences on the exterior, and an updated interior. Then came the Virage, which was supposed to be a separate car to sit in between the standard DB9, which was more comfort orientated, and the hardcore DBS. Unfortunately, that car only lasted for 18 months, as it was too close to the DBS in terms of harsh riding. And then that Virage facelift trickled down into the DB9, creating the DB9.2, which, if you ask me personally, I think really modernizes the front end of the DB9. Hard to believe that this design was around since 2004 and 2012 in the case of the DB9.2. So here is the walk around. The Aston Martin DB9 was designed by Ian Callum, who then went on to design the Jaguar F-Type. And here is the grille, the signature design that Aston Martin has had since. And the headlights do look very, very modern, though if I had to be really pedantic, is that the halogen indicators do date the front end a little bit. The side mirrors came from a Volvo. This is because Aston Martin and Volvo at the time were part of the Ford Premier Automotive Group, so there will be a lot of part sharing, including the aforementioned key found in the pre-glass key revision models. Coming to the side, even in 2003, this car came with flush door handles, which is now common in many sports cars of today. The general silhouette, I think, looks very nice. I actually prefer the look of the DB9 over the Vantage. The reason I mention that is many former F-Type owners have gone to the Vantage, but personally I would have gone with the DB9, especially when they're at a similar price point. Coming to the back, of course, you got the signature Aston Martin taillights, which has made its way onto almost every single VH platformed car. And you get the choice of having clear tail lights. This particular one has the standard red, but if I had to pick a design, I would go for the clears. So coming inside, as you open the doors rise ever so slightly. These are known as swan doors. They do this to clear the curbs since Aston Martin cars sit lower than most others. It's a small detail with a dramatic effect. I wish other cars came with those as well. But as we come inside, unfortunately, none of my interior content has been saved apart from the driving. But that being said, I do have some photos of the interior which I can talk through. Now, coming inside, the interior of the VH platform cars have something known as the waterfall interior, where the center console starts from the top and gradually slopes down to a tight slope, resembling a waterfall, of course. And if you look at the passenger compartment, it is all wrapped in leather. Interestingly, it is very, very similar to what I see in my F Type. And of course, this later car will have the updated infotainment system and HVAC controls. The gloss black also made it to the glass key revision. And being an automatic, you got the PRND buttons alongside the start button as well. This particular car uses the ZF 6-speed gearbox, and I'm glad this car uses a torque converter as opposed to a very jerky dual clutch. And while these cars come in a manual option, personally I think manual makes more sense in the Vantage. Interestingly, the Vantage has an almost identical interior as well. Now looking around, there is two sides of the story. The one is Ford or PAG parts bin specials, such as the buttons on the steering wheel, similar to what you get in a Ford, same with the indicator stalks, and of course you got the Volvo center console area as well. On the flip side, you do have some really nice Aston Martin dials, a bespoke steering wheel, and of course the glass key revision has these very nice seats. Likewise, the way the door releaser is integrated to the door handle also looks very nice and elegant. Fortunately, most of the driving has been filmed, and even setting off, the DB9 feels like an occasion. The accelerator pedal does feel a little hesitant, relatively speaking, to the F-Type, and there's definitely a lot more pedal travel with the brakes. However, it is only on drive, of course, and of course it has a torque converter automatic, specifically a ZF 6-speed, and because it's an automatic, it has paddles behind the wheel. Unfortunately, they are fixed to the column as opposed to fixed behind the wheel, meaning the moment you turn the steering wheel, the paddles do not move, meaning you have to take your hands off the wheel when operating the paddles, even at a slight turn. It doesn't really help the fact that the paddles are quite small as well. Fortunately, modern Aston Martins, such as the DB12, now have them behind the wheel. But of course, most DB9 owners don't really use the paddles. Most of the time, they're just using it on drive, cruising through Mayfair, or maybe along a country road. And I'm glad to say, as a Grand Tourer, that's what the DB9 does very, very well. Yes, it does feel a bit hesitant with the accelerator, but that being said, if you just cruise along like 20 or 30, it is easily livable. It tolerates low speeds very well, and whilst it is a fairly big car, it is still fairly maneuverable. I don't feel unconfident driving it around these country roads. Visibility is relatively good, though be warned, these do not come with a reversing camera. Back window can be a bit hard to see through due to the nature of it being a fastback, but overall it is still a very easy car to maneuver. Steering wheel does feel a lot lighter, it doesn't feel as direct, but again, I'm only driving it on drive and not sport. I did end up taking the DB9 along a country road. Yes, it was very narrow, but I did not have any issues maneuvering the DB9. Luckily, there were passing places that I could easily point the DB9 onto, and luckily, the oncoming traffic had zero issues with the DB9 being there. Luckily, there was a little triangular island which I could do a U-turn on, turning circle, given the length of the car, is very, very good. I did easily manage to do a U-turn on that same country road and then easily got back to the main road with minimal fuss. And there has been some national speed limit driving, but that hasn't been filmed. And even at 60, the DB9 feels very good to drive. Though I would advise that acceleration, at least on drive, is a bit sluggish, but the moment you put it into sport, it does feel a bit more responsive, even in manual mode. And of course, it only has the ZF 6-speed, so first and second gear in manual mode can feel a little jerky if you try to give it the beans. But again, that is me being pedantic. So in summary, I would say that the Aston Martin DB9 is a brilliant Grand Tourer first and sports car second. It is probably the perfect car for someone coming out of an XK Jaguar, but with regards to the F-Type Jaguar, the V8 Vantage is probably the more suitable replacement. But that being said, I have yet to drive any other Aston Martin, and if you are an Aston Martin owner, especially around the Gloucestershire, Bristol, North Wiltshire or West Oxfordshire area, please do hit me up, as I would like to make more Aston Martin content. In fact, even if you have a DB9 and you'd like your car featured onto the channel, please hit me up, as I would like to retry this review and hopefully get the audio working. So that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed watching me voice over my Aston Martin experience. A huge thank you to JayEmm on Cars for letting me drive his car. Like the video if you enjoyed it, subscribe if you are new, ring the bell to stay up to speed, and I'll see you guys next time. Cheers.